Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. All right, guys. As you know, I always like to start with the weather. So awesome. Where we're at is kind of warm. I've been talking to a lot of people across the country and in Canada, and I know that it kind of varies, but that most people kind of having mild weather right now. So yay for that. Excited to be back live with you guys again. Today, I'm going to introduce to you Jason Levoy. Jason is someone who has become a partner with me in business, and I'm thrilled to have him talk to you about a question that has come up so much amongst everyone. And we've got so many people in our Facebook groups I know who are going pro se, who are self represented, going into court without a lawyer. And while we're always going to recommend that you do your best to get one, we completely understand that there are times when you just can't, where you can't afford it, or they basically, your ex has basically talked to every lawyer in your small town, and now you have nobody to represent you because of conflict of interest. Or we've got clients who are in a town where there really is only the one lawyer. There's many reasons that you simply have to go to pro se for a while, or just that's how it is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm so excited. Here's Jason Levoy. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Renee. Thanks for having me on with you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Levoy. People call me the divorce resource guy. I'm a former divorce attorney who practiced divorce law for a number of years in New Jersey. And then one day I decided to put my hands up in the air and I had enough and I quit. And then I became a divorce coach, which is what I do now. So I work with people all over the country, helping them navigate the divorce process and forming a strategy to get them through, making sure everything they do is intentional and focused and organized. And that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. So let's jump right in. And maybe we start with whether or not you should even go pro se if you can help it.
So that is always the big elephant in the room. And in an ideal world, the answer to that, in my opinion, is no. Going through a contested divorce, where there's issues and disagreements, whether it's with custody or asset division, any big disagreements, I think the process is complicated enough. It's hard enough for attorneys to deal with, judges and the legal system. Trust me. So to go at it alone is a tall order. But like you said, Renee, at the end of the day, sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You're not guaranteed, like in a criminal situation where you're facing jail time and you're guaranteed an attorney to represent you. That's not the case in divorce. So it's a luxury. And while I would, suggest that, it's a necessity, if you can't do it, you can't do it. And if you want to get divorced, you have to go at it alone. And so that's where we come in to try to help you navigate that process.
So if you don't have a lawyer, then if you have to go in without one, how do you recommend that clients prepare for court without having a lawyer?
That's a great question. So, in my opinion, as a divorce coach, I emphasize preparation. I think preparation is the most important phase of the whole divorce. If you have the time. So, when do you have the time? If maybe you've decided you want the divorce, and maybe you haven't told your spouse yet. Maybe you have, but nothing's been filed in court. So time is on your side, right? That is the time that you should take to form your divorce team and start preparing. And there's a lot of things you need to do to prepare for divorce. Now, on the flip side, if you're not the one who's initiating the divorce, if nothing has been filed yet, you still have time to prepare and you should take advantage of that time, right? As long as nothing's been filed with the court, as soon as something gets filed, let's say like the complaint for divorce, then you're on the court's radar. And then you're going to start facing deadlines, hearings, whether you're ready or not. So as long as nothing's been filed, time is on your side. And I say prepare. It's your time to gather all the documents you need, get all your duckies in a row, I like to say. And again, form your divorce team of objective professionals to help guide you, whether that includes an attorney or not. There are other people like a coach, like Renee, a whole slew of other people that you may want to be considering to have on your team as you go through this.
Yeah, I love that you're noting that, it really is a tendency when you're making no headway at all with your co-parent or ex-spouse to just take them to court right away, when in reality, that's valuable time to get your strategy in order and possibly even gather more documentation if you take the time before you file. But you're right, once you file, then there are a lot of deadlines that come your way. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on that divorce train, so to speak. And, it may be a long train ride. Unfortunately, divorces can take a while if you litigate them in the courts. Um, but you're still on that train and it doesn't stop.
Mhm.
There may be some long routes in between stops, but it's not stopping because you're not ready. And so it's a constant stress for people. Once you're in that court system and there's deadlines and hearings, and you feel like kind of overwhelmed. That's why preparation is so important. So you want to prepare as best as possible, and give yourself as much time ahead, of anything filing with the courts as you can.
Yeah, we have somebody commenting in one of our Facebook groups saying that she actually has to do it as soon as possible because she has the kids, and if he files first, that would be bad because she's filing for emergency custody and divorce.
Right. So two things with that, without knowing more information, of course, you know, everything else being equal, it doesn't really matter who files first for divorce,
Mm.
right? Assuming there's nothing emergent going on. The person who files first is often called the plaintiff, and then the other side is called the defendant. People get caught up in, oh, I want to be the plaintiff, or it's bad to be the defendant. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
However, if there's an emergent issue going on, for example, where, somebody's in danger, or, threats are being made, really, when you're dealing with divorce and children and parenting time issues, emergent issues usually indicate perhaps domestic violence, and that's a whole nother area, of law that we can discuss at nauseum. It's its own niche, domestic violence. Not to saying everything, is domestic violence when it deals with the children, but if you're talking about an emergency in children, um, there's maybe more there that you need to look into. And then if you file an emergent application with the court, that's separate. That gets the divorce off, on a whole nother train ride, I'll say, right? And you're dealing with a whole another set of issues, especially immediately. And then so it changes the dynamic of it all.
Mhm. So, Jason, I'd love to have you talk about maybe a few usable sort of action items, like what elements you need to prepare you need to prepare in your case as a pro se litigant.
So, again, in order to prepare, it takes a certain person, a certain type of personality, I think, to be successful going at it alone, pro se.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that type of person needs to be very organized, focused, and know where to look for the answers, because there are going to be a lot of questions, and if you can't find the answers yourself, it's going to make things that much harder, right? So, um, you don't have to know the answers. Attorneys don't often know the answer to everything off the top of their head, but they know where to go for the answer, right? So, if you're going at it alone, I would say, number one, try to find out where your closest law library is to where you live, and get familiar with it. Law librarians who work there are often the nicest people, and are excited to help people representing themselves, because lawyers who ever go to a if attorneys ever go to a law library, they never ask for help because they act like they know everything. So law librarians love helping people, okay? And don't be shy to ask for their help. They can't give you legal advice, but they can point you in the direction of which books you need to be looking at to get the answer.
Mhm.
So that's number one. Or online, start, looking online, at, usually most counties have a court website now, that have court rules on them, court procedures. You need to familiarize yourself with those as best as possible. And I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be easy. Court procedures can be very confusing, even for attorneys, because there's a lot of rules, and sometimes they seemingly conflict with each other and overlap, and it's hard to know which rule to point for what. But if you're representing yourself, the judge is not supposed to give you any special treatment. They're really not. Now, if you get a good judge who is really empathetic, they will lean, you know, they will lean backwards to help you as much as possible. But even in that case, they can only do so much, right? Because if you're representing yourself, you are tasked with knowing what to do, even though that seems ridiculous, because why would you know what to do if you're not an attorney? But that's the way it is. So don't expect the judge to give you special treatment, and don't expect the judge to help you, figure out and advocate for your side. When you go to court, again, be organized. Come with a cheat sheet of notes, right? Of things that you want to make sure that you say, so you don't forget to say them. I'm using a cheat sheet right here just for this. Okay? So lawyers do that all the time because we're not robots, and as much as we think we can keep in our heads, we can't memorize everything, and it's not a play, it's not a theater show where you have to remember all your lines. It's about presenting yourself in a focused manner, and with a persuasive argument, supported by all the evidence that you can muster up to support your case, right? And whatever you're asking the court to do. So judges don't mind if you have notes and stuff. Obviously, don't write out a novel that you're reading line for line, because that won't look good or sound good. But I prefer like bullet points, just something that you can, look down to and say, oh, I forgot to mention this. And then, make sure you bring it up. So don't be afraid to do that. Just make a cheat sheet for yourself. But not one that's overly involved. Again, bullet points, a short outline, and that will also help you prepare your argument. So when you get to court, you'll be organized with your thoughts, right? And that's super important too. And the last thing I'll say about elements and preparing is practice ahead of time what you want to say. Again, you don't have to memorize it. It's not a rehearsed statement, so to speak, but just practicing. If you're not really comfortable with public speaking, for example, and most people aren't, and when you get to court, whether you are or not, it's a whole different dynamic, right? When you are in front of a judge and it's formal and it's intimidating, and you think you're ready, and then you get there and then you kind of freeze, and that's normal. So practice, right? Talk to a mirror, talk to a friend, just say the words out loud that you want to say, so the first time that you say it isn't in the courtroom, and then that will really help.
Yeah. For those of you who are just joining, we're talking with family lawyer turned divorce coach, Jason Levoy, and we're talking about what to do when you go pro se. And I love those elements that just a few of the elements to prepare. I think, another idea that I had that I talk about with people is, for example, let's say you're going for custody. If you're representing yourself, know what your district, what your jurisdiction considers the most important things. If you go onto the website, your court's website, just as Jason suggested, you can find what they consider their best interests for children factors, right? The custody factors. And depending on what jurisdiction you're in, a lot of them are extremely similar to each other. But your jurisdiction might prioritize one thing over the other. And when you're coming in with your evidence or whatever it is that you've got, then take a look at what they consider those custody factors to be, those best interest factors to be. And that should guide your bullet points and guide what evidence you're bringing in versus what evidence you're letting go of.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great point. And just to piggyback on that, you need to know, if you're representing yourself, you need to know what the law is where you live, right? Every state has their own laws regarding alimony and custody. And like Renee said, oftentimes there are a list of factors that a court will use to decide custody or decide alimony. And you want to know what those factors are, because you need to develop your case around those factors. If all your presentation and your evidence has to do with things that are not part of that list of factors, you really are just wasting your time.
Mhm.
because those are the things that the court is going to use when they make a decision, or a mediator, or anybody in any authority to try to help you resolve your case, right? You got to go by the law. So you have to know what the law is, where you live. So again, those should be things that are, you know, pretty easy to obtain, even if you're not an attorney. Obviously, the attorneys know where to go for that information. Um, but if you don't have that information, then you're really kind of just flailing at the wind, and throwing mud at the wall, hoping something will stick. And that's not the best way to
No.
succeed.
No, and I love that you say, going to the law library because that's a place where you can find out what your state's custody factors are, and, again, yes, you wanna use that as a guide for your bullet points, right?
Yeah,
Um
and law library, like law school libraries. Where's your closest law school? They will have a law library.
Mhm. So here's a question for you. If it's a school's law library, would they let in somebody who isn't a student?
Well, everybody's different, so I won't answer with a blanket statement, but yes, at least, in the pre-COVID days, the law library was kind of open to the public, because the public would use it.
Mhm.
So you might have to, sign in as a guest, but you should be able to get access to it. I would be surprised if you couldn't.
Okay, that's great. We did have some a few questions asking about, what are my chances if I'm in court and that type of thing. We do have some statistics that are fairly recent where we know that if both parties are going in pro se, statistics show that you've got a 50-50 chance of getting the results that you're hoping for from the court, getting the judgment that you want, right? If one party has a lawyer and one doesn't, that means that your pro se litigant, which is the person who's self-represented, going in without a lawyer, now their chances are 30% of getting the results that they want, the judgment that they want in the court, right? One of the questions said, what if what if you have legal aid or that type of thing? Well, then you are considered represented by a lawyer. And one of the things I always say is when I look at these statistics and I see, okay, they've got a lawyer because they've got all the money. They had me staying at home all the time. Maybe you were taking care of the kids or the home or whatever it was. And so he or she has all the money in the world and I have nothing. So I have to go pro se. So you're saying my chances are 30%. Statistically, that is what it shows. But let's talk about those statistics. Most people, when they go in pro se, are basically just going in on their own and kind of taking a stab at it. When we talk to these pro se litigants, what we hear them saying is, I figured I would come into court, tell them my story, show them my pile of evidence or this document or that document, and they would see what's what. But that's not really how it works. And so
No.
if you're prepared, Jason, you talk so much about the preparation. The preparation comes with knowledge. You have to increase your knowledge base. And then you have to go in to make that 30% statistic be the people who went in thinking, I'm just going to go in and tell them my story, right?
Yeah, no, knowledge really is power when it comes to divorce. And as a coach, that's what we do. I empower the people I work with the information that I think they need to know about divorce, from an attorney's point of view, so they can make the best decisions when the time comes. And a well prepared, self represented person, I've seen it. Judges hate. I'll give you the flip side. Judges hate dealing with pro se litigants who are unprepared, right? Because again, they can't really help them too much, and it's frustrating to deal with, to get through a hearing when one person doesn't know what's going on and it doesn't know the procedures, and the judge constantly has to say, "No, you can't do that," or "That's not how it works." Right? Nobody wants to be involved with that. But when you have somebody who's prepared, focused, organized, ready to go, articulate, substantiated by evidence, real legal evidence that an attorney would have, wow, judges are like super impressed with that.
Mhm, mhm.
And because you have attorneys who can't even get up to that standard, and so that would really, I would say, impress a judge, which again will bolster your credibility, which is everything in court.
So we've had some questions come in. We don't have time for all of them, but I'd like to try to get through as many as possible. One question we've got is how can you ensure that you are not too emotive or reactive during court, especially when you are diagnosed with complex PTSD, thanks to the relationship?
That's a great question. It's hard enough when you're not diagnosed or dealing with something like PTSD to keep yourself in check, right? When you're in court, I tell people, bring a pad, a legal pad, and on the paper in big bold letters, with a black marker, write, something that will remind you to stay calm, whether it's the words "keep calm" or "shut up" or "zip your lip," whatever works for you, to remind you to keep yourself in check. That's a good that's a good thing. Um,
Yeah,
and
something like you could even have a mantra where it's like, "This is for the kids," or, "My parents built this home," or whatever it is that will take you back to your center, right?
Yeah, whatever works for you. But whatever, so find that thing and then have that prominently available right where you can look down real quick and see it, to help remind you. And again, it goes back, not to sound like a broken record, it goes back to practice beforehand, right? Um, if you know the other side are going to say things that are going to get under your skin, you should expect that's going to come, right? So really, there should be very few surprises that happen in the courtroom. I always say expect the worst, prepare for the best, right? Um, so if you can, think about what are some of the worst things that they might say about me, ahead of time, how do you, how does that make you feel? And then how do you react to that? If it
Yeah,
triggers
because
you,
they're gonna try to trigger you, I
right.
think.
But so that's the thing though. Try to identify things so when they come out, if they come out, that's not taking you by surprise, right? Because
Right.
that's when we react, when you're not expecting something and you're like, "Well, he said what?" And judge, right? You don't want to do that. So if you are prepared mentally, emotionally,
I think it's
um,
preparation, and you also, some of the things that that you hear that people think, "Oh, well, I don't know." You know, we see such a huge difference when there are clients who um, start a meditation or EFT tapping practice, something where you've got these mantras, as you suggest, you've got yourself organized, you've got the knowledge base, and it's still not enough. If you've really truly done all of that, that's not a surprise. There's nothing wrong with you with that. But really, then what you need is that extra something that you have to lean into, because now what we're looking at is your parasympathetic nervous system. And when we've got that, all the preparation in the world can be undone if they trigger you in a way that they know will trigger you. And so, another recommendation that I want to throw in there is that you have some sort of a practice so that your parasympathetic nervous system is helping to take care of you before you even get into that courtroom. What we're talking about are tactics to prepare you in the courtroom. Part of that is a big part of that is preparation. And when we're talking about preparation, we're not just talking about here, have your knowledge, have your custody factors, and all the stuff. I mean, obviously, we're just telling you as much as we can in this time. But additionally, you have to be prepared. Your parasympathetic nervous system has to be in good shape for this and working for you. And it really does come from these things that feel like it's like, oh, the yoga, the nature bathing, the tapping, the meditation. This kind of stuff is what you need in order to fend off the triggering that they are absolutely going to bring in. I want to
yeah.
jump to another question. I like this one. This is about having a lawyer. What if your lawyer is great in terms of child protection, but then due to that, dissuades you from going after financial support in the way that you deserve, that you are owed?
Okay. I mean, that sounds like a very specific type of question that I would want to know a lot more information before I can really give an educated response. But you know, it amazes me how many people have stressful relationships with their own attorney. Right? You're going through a divorce. That's
Yes.
stressful enough. You're dealing with your ex, their attorney. That's stressful enough. You shouldn't be stressing about your attorney, but yet it happens. It's real, and it's really prevalent, unfortunately. So that's part of what we do is what I do as a coach is I help manage that relationship. So it all goes to communication, right? Your relationship with your attorney is like a relationship with anybody else. Communicate. If you have questions, ask them. I know you're getting billed, but what's the point of having your attorney there if you're not getting your questions answered or you're not on the same page? And um, so I mean, I help people manage that relationship, and sometimes you don't even know what the question it is to ask, right? But it sounds like if they're advocating one thing but not something else regarding the divorce, what's the reason for that, right? There has to be a reason, and you
You
need
wanna
to
find out. Yeah.
you need to understand, and then only once you understand where they're coming from, then maybe that'll change how you think, and maybe it won't. But then you'll know, is there something I need to do here? Or do I have to, pivot? Or but you have to understand why an attorney is saying something. Usually there's a reason, right? If an attorney is guiding you, they're there to guide you and give you advice. Well, why are they doing that? If you don't know, you need to know.
And I would posit that you also need to remember that you need to partner with your lawyer. Your lawyer has the knowledge with case law and process and procedure. You have the knowledge about your case. And I think it's important that you make sure that, yes, your lawyer is used to, there's a lot of similarities, and we find this as coaches as well. There's going to be a through line really with every client. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in family court. But every case is different, and you need a lawyer who's going to treat it differently. And then you have two options if they're not. One is you find a new lawyer. But I would suggest that first you try to partner more strongly with that lawyer, because it's not going to look good on you if you're going through a lot of lawyers, right? The optics are not great there. If you need a new lawyer, you get it. But the thing of it is that if you are partnering with your lawyer, then in this particular instance, I know of several lawyers who say the child custody is important, but the way that we're going to get there is actually through the money. And we're going to leverage that and ask for as much as makes sense so that it doesn't look like we're after the money. But then we now have a leverage point. And maybe that's something, again, we don't know the specifics of this, right? But, I've got another Facebook user saying, I'm asking for child support. It's the only thing I feel comfortable moving on. But I was advised to ask for the minimum amount of money first, not go for the money, that you should just care about the child. I think, again, we don't know the specifics of these cases, but what it boils down to is you're partnering with your lawyer. And if your lawyer's not willing to partner with you, you need to learn how to, with the help of a coach or with the help of some research you're doing, or just looking inside yourself, find a way to partner with this person. You're paying them so much money.
Right. I mean, there should be a strategy that every case has, right? That if you're the attorney, you have a goal to get you, the client, from A to Z, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you're at, E or L in that route, but there's a goal there. There should be a goal and a strategy to get you there. So the attorney may be well aware of the strategy. I hope they are, right? It's their strategy probably. But you need to be as well. And so if you're not, and it sounds like you may not be, if you have these questions, then that's where the communication breakdown is. And you need to try to repair that. And, if the attorney tells you what the strategy is and you disagree with that, well, then now we're at a decision point. So, do you pivot? Is it time to sever that relationship? Or is there room for discussion, and maybe you're not understanding, the benefit of going that way, or he doesn't understand, or she doesn't understand what your long-term goals are. There again, communication.
Yeah.
And then that will really tell you, what the real status of that relationship is.
So, Jason, I'm going to try to fit in just this one last question because I think it's really useful. Can you be represented for part of the case, but pro se for others?
I mean, technically you could. The first question I would ask is why, and then what part are you thinking about doing on your own versus not? It's hard. Sometimes it happens where people start with an attorney, and then midstream, the money runs out and they can't afford to keep them on board, and they have to go it at alone at that point. That happens quite often. But that's usually not a choice that is made. So, if you have a good attorney and the divorce is moving along, I always hesitate to say rock the ship, right? If it's not broken, don't fix it. But people, again, it's not ideal to go at it alone. Even if you're saving yourself some money. I understand how expensive it is to get divorced. But when you go at it alone, um, the train can get derailed very quickly. And then once it's derailed, it's hard to get back on the track sometimes, and a lot of times. So, again, I would have to know a lot more information about what you're thinking and why you want to do that, and how you want to do that. But it's not something I would, broadly recommend.
Yeah, and I have some comments here that it talks about, for them, it really comes down to affordability, how much can be done alone versus with a lawyer. So again, that would be by your case. Just real quick before we end here, Jason, what is the biggest takeaway that you hope our audience, which is made up largely of divorcing, abused, protective moms, can gain with you today?
So, you know, the number one thing I want you all to know, if you don't already, is that you're not alone, right? There are many, many people going through what you are going through right now or have gone through it in the past. And there are people in the future who are going to be going through it. And so it's a tough time. Going through a bad divorce is trauma. For you, it's going through a traumatic event. So don't dismiss that. And that's why it's so important for you to surround yourself with the right team of objective professionals like Renee, myself, because we can help guide you, help you make informed decisions on who to hire, on how to proceed. We work with people who have attorneys and who don't have attorneys. Again, a lot of people who have attorneys still stress and have issues with that relationship. So part of my job as a coach is to deal with that and make that better. So, when all the relationships are working, you want it to be like a well-oiled machine. And while you may be paying multiple people throughout, like an attorney, a coach, a therapist, or whomever, in the long run, if you have the right team around you, your overall bill will be down.
And I think for this particular audience, I would add a DV advocate, a domestic violence advocate to your team. They do not cost money. I've not met one yet where they're going to charge you for that, for what the service that they offer you. So I guess, we're going to end here. But before we do, you guys have heard some things from us, just little tips. Obviously, we can go much deeper. I think everyone understands there's only so much we can say here. But um, many of you may have seen the announcements where Jason and I have started the Divorce Authority program, which is our focus is will help everybody. Our focus is on people who are going pro se, who are self-represented. And you can see the advantages of basically working within that program, which is it's at a price that's a fraction of what you would ever pay a lawyer. So if affordability is a problem, then hopefully you can at least have enough to get the kind of help that you need, because we talked about you need that knowledge base. You need all of that to really beat that 30% chance you have if they have a lawyer, or the 50% chance if you are both going pro se or with lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, is there anything real quick you wanted to say about the Divorce Authority program yourself, Jason?
Renee and I we partnered to create this program from the ground up, just for people like you who are looking for affordable help. There's nothing else out there like it. And that's why we created it, because there's a need, right? So at the very least, if you can't afford an attorney, hopefully you can afford this program to give you a leg up, because again, going at it alone is not ideal. And if you're not the type of person who can get all the information, or you're not sure if you're doing things the right way, that's why we created this program. So you have access to both Renee and myself, to give you live coaching. You have access to both our individual coaching programs, under this one roof of the Divorce Authority program. And again, it's a fraction of a cost. You have to think of a divorce as an investment for your future, because the outcomes, once a judge makes a decision, it's going to dictate your post-divorce life on a permanent level. So
That's right.
you have to take it seriously.
Yeah. So we're so excited to bring it to you guys. Again, we've got sort of Jason's program really focusing on divorce and custody and just court issues, and the custody blueprint, our program is in there also for if you are in a custody battle against a high conflict co-parent, usually someone who is narcissistic or one of the other cluster B personality disorders. So to learn more about it, we've got the link right there, the divorceauthorityprogram.com. Even when I'm spelling it out, sometimes I have to make sure I get all the letters right. So made it kind of easy for you guys to see it there. Sign up there, get on our wait list. Whenever our cohorts are full, you will be put on a wait list for when our next cohort opens, because we just want to make sure that we're able to have, a good amount of people talking to us on the calls that you'll have with us every other week. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves. We want to be able to give you guys information. So Jason, amazing information that we gave to everyone who's going pro se today. For those of you who are watching this on replay, I think you're going to be very pleased with just the advice that we've given you and the direction we've given you. And again, if you guys need more direction and really want to prevail in court and increase your chances of doing so, then the divorceauthorityprogram.com is where you're going to find us. All right.
Yeah, we're here for you. You just have to reach out.
Bye, everyone.